I want you to imagine for just a moment a philosophical genius. Picture the kind of mind that holds the key to living a truly good, deeply fulfilling life.
Right, like who do you actually see when you picture that?
Exactly. Are you picturing an ancient Greek scholar in a toga, stroking a beard in the Athenian agora? Or maybe a modern astrophysicist unlocking the sprawling secrets of the cosmos on a chalkboard?
Yeah, usually it's someone with a lot of degrees and a very serious expression.
Right. But what if I told you that one of the most profound philosophers of the 20th century didn't have a degree, didn't write academic treatises, and in fact was a stuffed bear of, well, very little brain?
It sounds like a provocation, honestly, almost like a joke when you frame it that way.
It really does.
But we carry this deep-seated assumption in our culture that profound wisdom has to be complex, that it must be dressed up in, impenetrable jargon, heavily footnoted, and delivered with the utmost seriousness.
Oh, totally. If it's not hard to read, we assume it's not important.
Exactly. But if you look closely at the history of human thought, the most enduring truths are often hidden in plain sight. They masquerade as absolute simplicity. They are the truths we think we outgrow.
And that is the exact mission of our deep dive today. Welcome to the Common Room, broadcast from Chesterton Radio at the little station on Commercial Street in Atchison, Kansas.
It's good to be here around the table.
It's a great space. Here in the Common Room, we love to gather and explore the stories that have quietly shaped our civilization. And today, we are going to look past the Disney-fied, commercialized childhood nostalgia of Winnie-the-Pooh.
We really need to strip away the plastic lunchboxes and the greeting cards.
Yeah, the bumper stickers, all of it.
Yeah.
We're going to discover why this incredibly short series of books is secretly one of the wisest literary works ever written.
I love that.
We're going to explore how a small, honey-obsessed bear actually teaches us the completely lost art of living well.
And to do this properly, we are pulling from a remarkably rich stack of sources today. We have the biographical histories of the author A.A. Milne, the illustrator E.H. Shepard, and the real-life boy at the center of it all, Christopher Robin Milne.
The real people behind the myth.
Right. But we aren't just looking at the history. We are looking at the intellectual framework surrounding it. So we are diving into the essays of G.K. Chesterton, specifically his books Orthodoxy and Tremendous Trifles.
Which is such a brilliant lens for this.
It really is. We're anchoring this entire discussion in the idea that these stories are not just relics of childhood, but they're essential antidotes to our modern era of cynicism.
So if you're expecting a simple plot summary of a children's book, you were definitely in the wrong place. We're looking at childhood not as a fleeting chronological age that we inevitably just abandon, but as a permanent, crucial way of seeing the universe.
A completely different paradigm.
Exactly. We're exploring the fundamental tension between wonder and sophistication and the profound power of gratitude for ordinary life.
And to understand the idyllic, almost unearthly piece of the Pooh stories, we first have to understand the chaotic, highly sophisticated, and honestly deeply traumatic adult world its creators were desperately trying to escape.
Okay, let's unpack this because this is where the story completely shifts for me.
Yeah, the 100 Acre Wood doesn't exist in a vacuum. It was built as a fortress against a very specific kind of modern horror.
Right, because when you read Winnie-the-Pooh, it's so easy to picture the author as this gentle, grandfatherly figure, just a guy who spent his whole life sitting in sunny pastoral gardens writing cute poems.
That's the image, yeah. But A.A. Milne's actual life was entrenched in the absolute highest echelons of intellectual and cultural society. And then he was violently thrust into the worst catastrophe of the early 20th century.
It's such a wild contrast. I mean, Alexander Milne was deeply embedded in the British elite. He grew up in London at a small independent school run by his father. And get this, one of his early science teachers was none other than H.G. Wells.
Which is just an incredible detail. H.G. Wells teaching you science.
I know, right? And then he went on to attend Westminster School and then Trinity College, Cambridge. But here's a detail that completely rewired my understanding of his writing. He didn't study literature.
No, he didn't.
He studied on a mathematics scholarship. He actually graduated with a BA in math in 1903.
And what's fascinating here is that mathematical background is really the invisible architecture of his prose.
Wait, how so? Like, where do we see math in Winnie-the-Pooh?
Well, when you read the Pooh stories, the language is never flowery or overly romantic. It has this stark, logical clarity to it. The 100 Acre Wood operates on a closed, almost geometric internal logic.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, think about when Pooh and Piglet are tracking the woozle. They're following footprints in a circle, constantly adding to the equation, trying to solve a spatial problem.
Oh, wow. Yeah, 2 footprints become 3, 3 become 4.
Exactly. Milne approached whimsy with the precision of a geometer. He constructed these absurd premises but followed them through with rigorous mathematical deduction.
That is brilliant. It's a completely self-contained logical system just applied to a bear and a pig.
Right. And after Cambridge, he takes that precision straight into the literary world. He edited the student magazine Granta, which led him to Punch, which was the leading British humor magazine of the era.
The absolute pinnacle of wit at the time.
Yeah, by 1906, he's an assistant editor there. He's writing witty, whimsical essays. And he's a passionate cricketer, playing for amateur teams composed of fellow literary heavyweights. We're talking guys like J.M. Barrie, Arthur Conan Doyle, and P.G. Wodehouse.
Okay, just imagine that cricket team for a second. You have the creator of Sherlock Holmes, the creator of Peter Pan, the creator of Jeeves and Wooster, and the future creator of Winnie-the-Pooh, all on the same pitch.
It's like the Avengers of Edwardian literature.
It really represents the absolute pinnacle of Edwardian literary sophistication. And Milne was an incredibly successful playwright, too. He published 18 plays and 3 novels.
He was everywhere.
He even wrote a locked-room murder mystery in 1922 called The Red House Mystery that was phenomenally successful. So we are talking about an urbane, highly successful adult writer operating at the absolute height of his powers.
And then the First World War shatters that entire reality.
It just breaks everything.
Completely. Milne joined the British Army, serving as an officer in the Royal Warwickshire Regiment. In 1916, he served as a signals officer on the Somme.
And we really have to pause there
because
serving on the Somme is a phrase we read in history books, but the reality of it is almost incomprehensible.
It truly is. It was industrialized slaughter on a scale the human mind just wasn't prepared for.
Exactly. He saw the mud, the disease, the absolute devastation of an entire generation of young men. I mean, he caught trench fever and was eventually invalided back to England.
But the physical survival of the Somme was really only the first part of his trauma. After recuperating, Milne was recruited into military intelligence, specifically a unit called MI7B.
And this part is just chilling to me.
It is. Their mandate was to write propaganda. So think about this, Milne. A man who had dedicated his life to the precise, joyful use of language was now ordered by the state to use language as a weapon.
That is such a profound violation of what he stood for.
He spent his days fabricating atrocity stories, manipulating public emotion, and essentially writing horrific lies to keep the British war machine grinding forward.
The psychological toll of that, it's a completely different kind of violence, isn't it? You spend your days actively destroying the concept of truth. You are literally weaponizing narrative.
It completely hollows you out.
It's no wonder that when he finally left the war, he didn't want to write complex, morally ambiguous political thrillers. If you spend years swimming in the darkest, most manipulative waters of human psychology, you must develop a desperate, aching craving for something entirely uncorrupted.
You seek a sanctuary. You have to. And Milne was not the only one who needed it. The man who would eventually illustrate Winnie-the-Pooh, E.H. Shepard, went through a remarkably similar meat grinder.
This is like finding out a gritty war correspondent and a prestige dramatic director teamed up to make the world's most famous cozy sitcom.
It's exactly like that. Ernest Howard Shepard was a classically trained artist. He attended the Royal Academy schools. By 1906, he was a freely established book illustrator and also a contributor to Punch.
So their paths were already crossing in that sophisticated literary world.
Yes. And when the war came, he served in the Royal Artillery. He was at the Somme, he was at Arras, he was at Passchendaele.
Passchendaele. The battle that's literally famous for men drowning in liquid mud.
Yes. And Shepard actually won the Military Cross for bravery in 1917. Our sources note that he was a combat veteran who sketched the battlefields while under fire.
Wait, he was drawing while being shot at?
Yes, he was drawing artillery lines and maps while shells were literally raining down on him. And tragically, his brother was killed at the Somme.
That is just, it's unimaginable. And then he goes on to draw a piglet holding a dandelion.
What's fascinating here is the supreme irony of their creative lives, and it's just staring us right in the face. The sheer trauma of the trenches, the catastrophic failure of adult sophistication, modern politics, technological progress, all of it culminated in millions of men dying in the mud.
So all that high-minded Edwardian society essentially led them straight into a slaughterhouse.
Exactly. Subconsciously, these two highly sophisticated, war-torn men needed to construct an innocent, safe world. They desperately needed a reality where the biggest crisis imaginable is a bear getting stuck in a rabbit hole because he ate too much honey.
The Hundred Acre Wood is a trauma response. That's what it is. It is a psychological fortress. They built a world where death simply does not exist, where malice does not exist.
No one is actively trying to hurt anyone else.
Right. The worst thing that happens is a mild misunderstanding, or maybe getting a bit wet in the rain, or Eeyore losing his tail.
But the tragic irony of all of this is that both men ultimately deeply resented the fortress they built.
Wait, really? They hated it.
They created a sanctuary that became a gilded cage for their careers. Milne fiercely believed that a writer should write whatever they please, and he absolutely hated being pigeonholed as a children's author.
Oh, I can see that. He wanted to be seen as a serious intellectual.
Right. He complained bitterly that after writing, 70,000 words about Pooh, the public expected him to just keep repeating himself forever, completely ignoring the fact that he was a serious playwright and novelist.
He had that incredible quote where he said he should be as proud to write a telephone directory with passion as he should be ashamed to write a blank verse tragedy just because someone ordered him to.
Yes, he valued artistic freedom above everything.
He just wanted the freedom to move on. He felt his intellectual capacity was vastly larger than this one project about stuffed animals.
And Shepard felt an identical resentment. I mean, he had a massive body of other illustrative work, historical books, brilliant political cartoons for Punch, classical oil paintings. He had trained at the Royal Academy, after all.
He wasn't just a doodler.
Exactly. But it was all entirely eclipsed by what he later bitterly referred to as that silly old bear.
Oh, that breaks my heart a little bit. That silly old bear.
He felt his reputation as a serious, versatile artist was permanently hijacked by Pooh and Piglet.
It's the classic creator's dilemma, just amplified to a global scale. But, while Milne and Shepard resented the bear's shadow over their professional lives, the true tragedy of the story didn't fall on them. It fell upon the actual child at the center of the phenomenon.
This is where the story gets really difficult.
Yeah, because while the creators were adults who could at least articulate their frustration and fight back in the press, the real Christopher Robin was merely a boy who had his most private moments strip-mined for public consumption.
It's true. While Milne and Shepard felt artistically confined, the real Christopher Robin Milne paid a profoundly personal price. Christopher Robin, who was actually known to his family as Billy Moon, was Milne's real and only son, born in 1920.
Billy Moon. That's such a sweet private nickname.
It was. And the world of Pooh was constructed directly from the raw materials of his private childhood.
Because the toys were actual physical objects. This wasn't pure invention on Milne's part. Milne bought his son an 18-inch Alpha Farnell teddy bear from Harrods in 1921.
Right, and initially the boy named it Edward.
Edward Bear. And then later it became Winnie, named after a real Canadian black bear that had actually served as a military mascot and ended up at the London Zoo.
And the name Pooh came from a swan they used to feed, actually.
Which is such a weird but perfectly childlike way to name something. And Piglet and Eeyore were also early gifts, just organic parts of Billy Moon's nursery life. But a revealing shift occurs in Milne's creative process as the stories begin to gain real traction, doesn't it?
It does, and it's a very telling shift. The later characters, Kanga, Roo, and Tigger, they weren't chosen by the child out of natural affection or just organic play.
No.
No, they were purchased by the parents specifically to give A.A. Milne new characters to write about.
Oh, wow. That detail completely shifts the dynamic for me. Isn't this basically the 1920s equivalent of family vloggers?
It's an incredibly apt comparison.
Like today, we talk constantly about the ethics of sharenting. We look at these family vloggers who take a camera, film their toddlers' tantrums, their most intimate playtime, their silly little private games, and then monetize it for millions of views on YouTube.
And we recognize how deeply damaging it is to turn a child's private development into global content.
Exactly. Milne was executing the exact same mechanism, just rendered in print rather than video. He took his son's private sanctuary and sold it to the world.
The ethical dilemma is absolutely identical. Christopher Robin was largely raised by his beloved nanny, Olive Rand, whom he affectionately called New.
Nannies did so much of the heavy lifting back then.
They really did. His time in the nursery, his games in the woods near their country home at Cochford Farm, those were his private reality. But his father, who was often observing from a distance rather than playing with him, mined that reality for content.
Just extracting material.
And because the books were so phenomenally successful, the global public felt a terrifying sense of ownership over this real little boy.
Our sources mention that he was deeply bullied at boarding school because of his fame. And, boarding schools in 1930s Britain were brutal enough on their own.
Oh, notorious for it.
But entering that environment as the famous little boy in the smock who says his prayers in the poem Vespers, or the boy who holds tea parties for a stuffed pig, the psychological torment must have been agonizing.
He wasn't allowed to just be a person. He was a walking literary character. Other boys would literally chant his father's poems at him mockingly.
That is just awful. And as Christopher grew older, that torment curdled into fierce resentment, didn't it?
Yes. He viewed his father's actions as a direct exploitation of his childhood. He wrote later, quite devastatingly, that he felt his father had filched from me my good name and had left me with nothing but the empty fame of being his son.
Filched from me my good name. That is a heavy, heavy accusation.
It is, and that resentment led to a total estrangement. He married his first cousin, which further fractured the family dynamic, and he moved far away to Dartmouth to open a small, quiet bookshop.
He's wanted out.
He spent his adulthood trying to disappear from the public eye. He was trying to escape the ghost of his own childhood self.
But the tragedy of opening a bookshop is staggering when you think about it. He is surrounded by the very objects, books that ruined his relationship with his father.
It's a painful irony.
And what actually happened to the physical toys themselves? The actual companions of that little boy who started it all.
The original toys, Pooh, Piglet, Eeyore, Kanga, and Tigger, they were donated and now sit in a display case at the New York Public Library.
Just sitting there?
Yeah. And they are visited by roughly 750,000 people every single year.
750,000 people staring at a child's old, worn-out teddy bear.
It forces us to confront a really heavy question about the nature of childhood and memory. At what point does the act of documenting a memory destroy the reality of it?
That's the core of it, right there.
Those toys are perfectly preserved under bulletproof glass now. They are protected from physical decay, but they are entirely stripped of their original private magic.
They are museum artifacts now. They aren't companions. They are content.
Exactly. The magic of the 100 Acre Wood was vividly real for Billy Moon, but making it real for millions of strangers seemingly extinguished it for him entirely.
By trying to capture the lightning in a bottle, Milne ended up suffocating the lightning. But, if the creation of this world was so suffocating for the real Christopher Robin, why did millions of other children and adults feel so safely held by it?
That's the flip side of the coin.
Right, because that universal sense of safety didn't come from Milne's words alone. It came from E.H. Shepard, a man who knew how to draw a safe place because he had survived the most dangerous places on Earth.
If Milne provided the voice and the logical structure of the 100 Acre Wood, Shepard provided its tactile, undeniable physical reality.
He grounded it.
He really did. He didn't approach this as a throwaway gig, just drawing generic cartoon backgrounds. He treated the assignment with the rigor of a landscape architect mapping a real territory.
Because the 100 Acre Wood isn't a made-up, hazy fantasy realm. It is directly based on a specific, real, physical place. The 500 Acre Wood in Ashdown Forest in East Sussex.
Just a short walk from Milne's country home, Cochford Farm.
And Christopher Robin himself later confirmed the exactness of this, didn't he? Stating that Pooh's Forest and Ashdown Forest are identical.
Identical. Shepard spent immense amounts of time walking that specific landscape. He tracked the terrain, he sketched the specific trees, the bridges, the contours of the land from real life.
He wasn't just sitting in his studio inventing a forest.
No, he would wander the woods with his sketchbook, observing the play of light through the canopy and the exact prickly shape of a gorse bush.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. He functioned like a modern cinematic world builder or a location scout. He treated a child's fantasy as a place worthy of architectural respect.
Yep.
Our sources point out his meticulous dedication to spatial consistency. There's that incredible example in the house at Pooh Corner when Owl's house blows over in the wind.
Oh, that sequence is a masterclass in illustration.
Shepard didn't just draw a crashed, chaotic house. He first drew the house upright and then literally mapped out and labeled how every single element, the front door, the bell pull, the windows, the furniture, would transform and shift orientation once the tree was turned on its side.
That fastidious dedication is what gives the illustrations their profound grounding. It's not just a cute drawing, it's a masterful piece of cartography of the imagination.
It makes it feel like you could actually walk there.
That is precisely why his original 1926 map of the Hundred Acre Wood recently sold at auction at Sotheby's for £430,000.
Nearly £500,000 for a drawing of a fake map.
Because people aren't just buying a drawing, they're buying a verifiable piece of geography from their own childhoods.
And when you look at Shepard's original work compared to what happened to the visual identity of Pooh later on, the contrast is just stark.
It really is a shame. In the 1960s, the Walt Disney Company acquired the licensing rights. And while they initially tried to incorporate Shepard's style, you can actually see the original map in the opening of the 1977 film over time. The characters became increasingly, well, Disney-fied.
The edges were completely smoothed out.
Shepard's work is characterized by highly authentic, naturalistic black and white line work. It has texture. It has a slight organic messiness that reflects the real natural world.
It looks like a real forest.
Exactly. Disney standardized the characters into bright, flat, solid colors. They permanently dress Pooh in a red t-shirt, which, by the way, Shepard had only drawn occasionally for very specific winter scenes.
Oh, really? I didn't realize the red shirt wasn't an everyday thing in the original.
It wasn't. And they transformed the world into a generic, rounded, frictionless cartoon environment. They gradually erased Shepard's grounded visual influence in favor of a highly marketable, simplified aesthetic.
But why does that shift actually matter? Beyond just, art critique, why does it matter if the trees look like real Ashdown forest pines or just generic cartoon bubbles?
It matters deeply because true imagination is always rooted in the careful observation of reality. The reason we implicitly believe in a walking, talking, stuffed bear who writes poetry is because the ground he walks on feels tangibly real.
The contrast sells the fantasy.
Yes. When you untether fantasy from the observation of the real world, it loses its emotional weight. It becomes superficial. It becomes plastic. Shepard's genius was recognizing that a child's imagination doesn't need fake settings. It thrives when the magic is occurring in a world they can actually recognize, with bark that looks rough and streams that look cold.
It is the friction between the extraordinary, a talking bear, and the ordinary, a meticulously drawn gorse bush, that makes the narrative so compelling.
Absolutely.
And that friction brings us perfectly to the philosophical core of why these stories resonate so deeply across generations. We've mapped the real-world geography and the tragic biography. Now we need to dive into the philosophy.
This is where we bring in the big guns.
Exactly. To do that, we are looking at the brilliant English philosopher G.K. Chesterton.
Chesterton is the ultimate lens through which to view Winnie-the-Pooh, even though he wasn't writing about the bear directly.
Right, they were contemporaries, but operating in different spheres.
Exactly. The broadcasts from Chesterton Radio's The Common Room frequently highlight his ideas, specifically from his book Orthodoxy in a chapter called The Ethics of Elfland, as well as his essay collection Tremendous Trifles.
Two absolute must-reads, by the way.
Definitely. Chesterton was writing in the early 20th century at the exact same cultural era as Milne, and he was diagnosing a profound sickness in the modern adult mind.
He diagnosed the sickness of sophisticated cynicism. Chesterton argued that modern adults, whom he brilliantly called gray doubters, have become completely numb to the miracle of existence.
They've just stopped seeing it.
They rely on rational, high-stakes excitement just to feel a pulse. They need constant stimulation, bigger explosions, more complex intellectual arguments, just to stave off the crushing boredom of being alive.
Chesterton believed that the modern world was rapidly losing its capacity for wonder. In The Ethics of Elfland, he champions what he calls the doctrine of conditional joy.
This is such a fascinating concept.
It really reframes how we look at rules. He analyzes fairy tales and points out that all virtue and magic in these stories relies on a strict condition, an if.
Right.
You can live in the Golden Palace if you don't say the word cow. You can have the magic if you don't open the forbidden door. Cinderella can go to the ball and dance with the prince if she is back by the stroke of midnight.
So the magic is fundamentally tied to a limitation, a veto. The condition doesn't ruin the joy. The condition is what makes the joy possible in the first place.
Exactly. And Chesterton argues that this is precisely how existence itself works. The ultimate test of happiness, for Chesterton, is gratitude for the limitations and the sheer unearned existence of things as they are.
He points out the absurdity of our modern entitlement. He argued that we shouldn't just be grateful when Santa Claus puts a specific toy in our stocking. We should be profoundly grateful to whatever cosmic Santa Claus gave us the miraculous gift of 2 legs to walk to the stocking in the first place.
Yes. Why is it that we can thank a relative for a birthday present of slippers, but we thank no one for the birthday present of birth itself?
Think about when you get a new smartphone. It is the perfect modern manifestation of this entitlement. You buy a new phone, and for the first 48 hours, it is a piece of astonishing alien magic.
You can't put it down.
You are holding all of human knowledge, high-definition global communication, and instant translation in a glowing rectangle in your pocket. But a week later, the magic is totally gone, and you are absolutely furious tapping the screen in rage if a web page takes 3 seconds to load.
We acclimatize to miracles instantly.
We take the baseline of existence completely for granted.
This raises an important question, and that acclimatization is a failure of perspective. Chesterton illustrates this beautifully in Tremendous Trifles with an allegory about 2 boys, the giant Paul and the pygmy Peter.
Walk us through that one.
So Paul wishes to become a giant. He gets his wish, and suddenly the world shrinks around him. The towering mountains become like molehills. The vast oceans become like puddles to step over.
He can conquer everything in 5 minutes.
Right. And because everything is small and manageable to him, he finds the world boring, trivial, and unworthy of his attention. He is the ultimate cynic. He has literally outgrown the world.
He is the modern intellectual. He's the guy doom-scrolling on his phone while standing in front of the Grand Canyon, entirely unimpressed because he already understands the geological erosion that caused it.
Precisely. Now, the other boy, Peter, wishes to become a pygmy. He shrinks down, and suddenly the blades of grass are like towering redwood forests. A small, mundane garden becomes an infinite, enchanted jungle of terrors and wonders.
Because of his size, the world regains its majesty.
Exactly. To the small person, the world is vast, mysterious, and deeply exciting. Chesterton is saying that the cynical modern adult has chosen to be the giant Paul bored, entitled Constantly Looking Down on Everything.
And Winnie-the-Pooh is the absolute embodiment of the pygmy Peter perspective.
Pooh lives in a state that Chesterton described as walking the streets with a sort of half-witted admiration.
I love that phrase, half-witted admiration.
It perfectly describes Pooh. He experiences profound, unceasing gratitude for merely existing. He doesn't need to conquer the world or understand the cosmos or optimize his time to find his life meaningful. He just needs to look at a honeypot or listen to the thrumming of a bee, and he is overwhelmed by the miracle of it.
So let's unpack how Pooh actually practices this Chestertonian philosophy of wonder in his daily life in the Hundred Acre Wood. Because when you read the books, Milne isn't writing philosophical tracts.
No, not at all.
Pooh isn't delivering lectures on conditional joy. He's just living it out in real time.
He lives it through a radical, uncompromising embrace of the ordinary. The stories continuously highlight the immense joy found in things that sophisticated adults consider mundane wastes of time.
Like what?
Like the joy of unhurried conversation, the joy of just sitting quietly by a river watching the water move. Tigger finds immense, explosive joy merely in the physical act of bouncing. Eeyore finds a quiet, albeit melancholy, satisfaction in locating a particularly nice patch of thistles. Rue delights in small, helpful things.
It is a complete rejection of utility. Nothing in the Hundred Acre Wood is measured by its economic output, its efficiency, or its return on investment.
Everything just has intrinsic value.
And that rejection is most beautifully visible in how they practice friendship. Look at Eeyore. Eeyore is clinically depressed. He is gloomy, pessimistic, slow-moving, and a total buzzkill.
He really is.
In our modern, hyper-optimized adult world, Eeyore would be excluded. People would read a self-help book, decide they need to cut toxic energy out of their lives, and Eeyore simply wouldn't get invited to the party.
Oh, he'd be ghosted immediately.
Or worse, they would constantly force him to cheer up, telling him to practice mindfulness or drink green juice to make his emotional state more palatable to the group.
But the radical nature of the Hundred Acre Wood is that the animals never do that. They practice friendship without utility. Eeyore is never excluded from an expedition or a birthday party.
He is always invited.
And crucially, he is never forced to change his fundamental nature to be deemed valuable to the community. When Pooh and Piglet decide to build Eeyore a house at Pooh Corner, they don't do it to cure his depression. They don't do it to fix him.
Right.
They do it simply because it is snowing, he is cold, and he is their friend. They accept the entirety of who he is without demanding a return on their emotional investment.
You mentioned expeditions. That's Pooh's mispronunciation of an expedition for those who haven't read it recently. They go on these grand quests to find the North Pole or to track a mysterious woozle. They are finding profound magic just beyond where the practical maps stop.
It is the living embodiment of Chesterton's idea that life is an ecstasy because it is an adventure. The Hundred Acre Wood is safe, yes, but it is never fully known. There is always the possibility of discovery.
Even if that discovery is just realizing you've been walking in circles tracking your own footprints in the snow.
Exactly. The thrill of the hunt, the engagement with the mystery is entirely real to them.
But let me play devil's advocate here for a second. I can hear the cynics, the gray doubters, listening to this analysis and rolling their eyes.
I'm sure they are.
They are saying, come on, you are romanticizing a cartoon. Let's be brutally honest. Isn't Pooh just lazy? He sits around all day eating honey, singing little hums to himself, and letting the clever animals like Rabbit do the actual work of organizing and managing the woods.
That critique is the exact trap the modern mind falls into, and it requires us to make a crucial philosophical distinction. Pooh is not lazy. Pooh is practicing leisure.
But wait, laziness implies you're avoiding a responsibility. Pooh doesn't seem to have responsibilities to avoid. He's entirely present in his resting. How do we actually separate the two?
Laziness is fundamentally an absence. It is apathy, disengagement, and a refusal to participate in the reality of life. Sitting on a couch, scrolling mindlessly through social media for 5 hours while ignoring the world around you is laziness.
Okay, that makes sense.
Leisure, on the other hand, is an active, joyful appreciation of life. It is the deliberate carving out of time for contemplation, for connection, for experiencing the world without trying to extract immediate value or productivity from it.
So it's intentional.
Very intentional. The ancient Greeks had a word for this, skol. They believed that leisure was the highest form of human activity. It was the time when you actually did the work of being human, engaging in philosophy, creating art, deepening friendship.
So Rabbit is busy, but his busyness isn't making him a better or happier animal.
Rabbit and Owl represent the modern adult. They are the clever ones. But look at what happens to them. They get tied up in endless bureaucratic knots.
Rabbit is exhausting.
He is. Rabbit is always organizing schedules that inevitably fall apart, stressing over rules, writing out lists, and trying to manage everyone else's behavior.
And Owl.
Owl uses massive, complicated words to sound intellectually superior, but he often completely misses the actual point of the conversation. They represent the adult obsession with intellect, control, and management.
While Pooh is just vibing.
Pooh freely admits he is a bear of very little brain. But because his brain isn't cluttered with anxiety about the future or obsession with productivity, it leaves room for a very large heart.
He doesn't have the intellectual clutter blocking his view of reality.
Precisely. Pooh is the one who sees the invisible truths. He intuitively understands love, belonging, and empathy in a way that the smart characters completely miss.
He gets to the core of things.
As the reflections from Chesterton Radio's The Common Room point out, joy is the one thing the cynical gray doubters cannot defeat. You can argue with cleverness, you can outsmart a strategy, you can deconstruct a complex philosophy, but you cannot argue with the simple, ridiculous, profoundly grateful joy of a bear eating a pot of honey.
It just exists.
It is entirely impervious to cynicism because it doesn't rely on logic, it relies on presence.
It's a complete inversion of how we measure value today. We measure time by what it produces, but Pooh measures time by what it allows him to experience.
Exactly.
It honestly makes me want to look at my calendar right now, cancel everything that relies on utility, and just go sit in a park and watch the clouds.
Highly recommended.
But before we all run off to find our own 100-acre wood, I want to situate Pooh in a broader literary context. Pooh isn't the only enduring British children's classic to explore these themes of childhood, nature, and escaping the adult world. How does Milne's creation compare to its legendary peers?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, looking at the contemporaries sharpens our understanding of what makes Milne's specific vision so unique. The two biggest touchstones of that era are J.M. Barrie's Peter Pan and Kenneth Graham's The Wind in the Willows.
Right, and as we discussed earlier, Milne was intimately connected to both the authors and the works.
He played cricket with J.M. Barrie, he idolized him, and he actually adapted The Wind in the Willows for the stage.
In 1929, Milne wrote a highly successful stage adaptation of Graham's novel, which he titled Toad of Toad Hall.
Yes. So Milne was deeply immersed in the literary DNA of these other worlds. He understood exactly what Barrie and Graham were doing.
Let's compare the psychological coping mechanisms these three worlds offer. If a reader is looking for a way to process the reality of growing up, what is the difference between retreating to Neverland, settling down on the riverbank, or moving into the Hundred Acre Wood. What are the different visions of childhood being presented here?
We see three very distinct philosophies of human development. Let's start with Peter Pan.
Okay, Neverland.
Neverland is defined by fierce rebellion. It is about the desperate, anarchic refusal to grow up. Peter is a deeply tragic figure because his eternal youth requires eternal amnesia. He has to constantly forget everything, even his friends, so he can remain entirely untethered in the present moment.
He can't form lasting attachments.
No. Neverland is a place of violence and high-stakes pirates, ticking crocodiles, kidnapping, tribal warfare. It presents childhood as a feral, escapist state that exists in violent opposition to the ticking clock of adulthood.
Peter Pan is the embodiment of denial. It's Peter standing at the window looking in at the Wendy house, knowing he can never be part of the warmth of a real family because to belong is to age. It's heartbreaking.
It really is a tragedy disguised as an adventure.
What about the Wind in the Willows?
The riverbank in The Wind in the Willows is actually much more about navigating adult tensions. It explores the conflict between the reckless, egotistical urge to wander and seek thrill, which is perfectly embodied by Mr. Toad and his destructive obsession with motor cars, and the deep, mystical, almost spiritual pull of home, hearth, and belonging, represented by Mole and Badger.
So it's about inner conflict.
Yes. It's a cozy world, but it is constantly threatened by the darkness of the wildwood and Toad's own internal flaws. It's about learning to manage your desires, curb your ego, and appreciate the quiet life.
So Peter Pan is denial, Toad is indulgence, and the struggle for moderation. Where does that leave Winnie-the-Pooh?
Winnie-the-Pooh is an anomaly. It isn't about escaping adulthood through amnesia like Peter Pan, and it isn't about managing adult flaws and neuroses like Toad. It presents childhood not merely as a chronological age that you must inevitably pass through and mourn. Instead, the Hundred Acre Wood presents childhood as a way of seeing. It is a timeless sanctuary where the smallest, most micro-level adventures like finding Eeyore's lost tail, trying to trick some bees with a mud puddle and balloon, or simply eating a midday meal are celebrated as the greatest, most important events possible.
There are no pirates trying to murder them. There are no stolen motor cars crashing into ditches. The stakes are so incredibly low, which is exactly what allows the emotional resonance to be incredibly high.
In the Hundred Acre Wood, time doesn't tick relentlessly forward, hunting you down like the crocodile in Peter Pan. Time is spacious. It is unhurried.
It's eternal, in a way.
It is a world where, as Milne wrote in the final beautiful lines of the series, in that enchanted place on the top of the forest, a little boy and his bear will always be playing.
Such a gorgeous line.
It suggests a profound philosophical hope. If you can hold on to that specific way of seeing, that Chestertonian gratitude for the ordinary, that pygmy perspective where the small things are vast and wonderful, then you never truly have to be exiled from the Hundred Acre Wood, even when your physical body grows old.
It's about retaining the capacity for wonder, rather than retaining your literal youth.
Christopher Robin has to leave the wood at the end of the books. He has to go to school. He has to learn to do equations. He has to grow up. But the tragedy isn't that he grows up.
No.
The implicit hope is that the reader, standing in for the adult Christopher Robin, can retain the mindset of the bear. You can do the math, you can go to the office, but you can still view the world through the lens of profound gratitude.
This has been an astonishing journey. Let's pull all of these threads together as we wrap up our time in the common room today. We started by uncovering the hidden trauma behind the idyllic world of Pooh.
The shadow behind the sunlight.
Exactly. We saw how two highly sophisticated war-torn men, A.A. Milne, with his Cambridge math logic and MI7B propaganda background, and E.H. Shepard, sketching artillery lines at Passchendaele, built a timeless sanctuary as a psychological escape from the horrors of the modern world.
A sanctuary that ended up trapping them.
Right. We explored the deeply tragic irony of how the global public's consumption of this private sanctuary took a devastating toll on the real Christopher Robin, forcing us to ask when documenting a memory ultimately destroys it.
We also looked at how E.H. Shepard mapped the magic of that world through meticulous, real-world observation of the Ashdown Forest. He proved that the most enduring fantasies are anchored in reality, in the friction between the extraordinary and the ordinary.
Which stands in stark contrast to the frictionless, flattened aesthetic of the later Disney adaptations.
Yeah.
And then we dove deep into the philosophy of it all, using J.K. Chesterton to explain why a honey-obsessed bear is actually delivering a masterclass in living well.
The ethics of Elfland in action.
We broke down the doctrine of conditional joy, the vital difference between the cynical, bored giant Paul and the grateful, awestruck pygmy Peter. We saw how Pooh's practice of unhurried leisure and unconditional friendship defeats the modern sickness of the gray doubters.
Which ultimately showed us that compared to Peter Pan's fierce rebellion against time or Mr. Toad's reckless wandering, Pooh offers us something far more sustainable: childhood as a permanent, accessible lens of wonder.
So what does this all mean for you, sitting there listening right now? It means that in our hyper-sophisticated, overly anxious, endlessly scrolling modern world, the most radical thing you can do might just be the simplest.
Absolutely.
Practicing unhurried conversation. Finding wonder in the way the light hits a single tree in your neighborhood. Offering friendship to the Eeyores in your life without demanding utility or forced positivity in return.
Those aren't childish behaviors to be outgrown.
No, they are acts of quiet, powerful rebellion against a world that demands we be cynical, rushed, and constantly productive.
There is a final provocative thought that I want to leave you to mull over as we clears out.
Lay it on us.
We spend our entire lives striving to be sophisticated. We go to universities, we accumulate vast amounts of data, we optimize our careers, we seek to become the giants who conquer and understand the mechanics of the world.
We all want to be Paul the Giant.
Right. But what if intellectual maturity isn't about outgrowing the 100 Acre Wood at all? What if the highest form of enlightenment, the absolute truest wisdom, is realizing that becoming a bear of very little brain is actually the only way to recover the wonder of the universe?
Maybe true genius isn't found on the chalkboard or in the toga. Maybe true genius is just knowing exactly when it's time to pause for a little smackerel of something sweet and being profoundly, unconditionally grateful for it. Thank you for joining us in the comment room. Until next time.